A few months ago, I scrubbed through some of the dankest corners of the internet to dig up some lost and obscure Grand Theft Auto mods. And I know it's been a while, but I've spent some time digging up a few other obscure total conversions for the 3D era GTA titles that should hopefully keep you busy until 6 comes out next year. And the ones that I found this time lean way more into the wind of obscurity. So strap in and let's dive into part 2 of Lost and Obscure Grand Theft Auto mods. The 6th generation of consoles was the era where we had a ton of bangers coming out left and right. Not only did we get 6 different GTA games to play around with at this time, on top of other great games by Rockstar, and of course many others, but there was a ton of movie and TV show tie-in games that were popping off in this era too. And there were actually some bangers that came out within this genre, like most notably Simpsons Hit and Run, a GTA-like open-world driving game that took place in an open-ended Springfield. And one other banger I enjoyed in this era was the Futurama video game, which I thought was an okay platformer that had somewhat open-ended areas to explore. But even going into it way back then, I was disappointed that we wouldn't be able to explore a fully open-ended New York. For now though, I happened to stumble upon GTA New York, a mod for GTA Vice City that was built off of the GTA Liberty City team's framework of forward porting 3 and its missions into the Vice City engine. So now it's essentially GTA 3 with a Futurama skin over pretty much everything, but running on Vice City's engine. I know, it's kinda confusing. But this mod was released around 2017 by the dev RockQ1 over on ModDB, and they've helped on a number of different projects in the modding community throughout the years. But GTA New York looks like it was a small side project that RockQ1 was working on at some point that essentially transforms Liberty City into the futuristic New York we all know and love from the show, with most of the world's textures now resembling that cartoony look. And Claude is also replaced with this abomination that's supposed to be Fry.
It's like a party in my mouth and everyone's throwing up.
And many of the other characters in the game are also replaced with other ones from Futurama too, like Misty now being replaced with Leela, and more. Plus, there are plenty of recognizable landmarks found all around town that really do make it feel like you're exploring around New York. Of course, you got the Planet Express building in here, which is right off of the river in the first island. You can't have a Futurama game without that. As well as the transport tubes found spiraling all around the city and its entire skyline. Unfortunately, we can't use these as they were never really programmed in this version of the mod, but still, seeing those tubes all across the cartoonish skyline really sells this mod on the idea that you're in New York, and it wouldn't be the same without them. Plus all the advertisements from all the show's many fake corporations, and the sewer slide booths found on every street corner, and hell, even shoved into the side of some buildings, really sells the idea that New York is all about ethically killing off its own population. And hell, you even got the stadium being completely replaced with Madison Cube Garden. And of course, since it's the future, hover cars are going to be all around town in this version, with almost all of the vehicles in game having their tires removed to give the illusion that they're hover cars in the first place. However, the handling for these vehicles have also changed a bit because of these hover mechanics, but man do they feel sluggish. Kinda like a slurm worm. Hell, there's even a few slurm delivery trucks and new vehicles that are taken directly from the Futurama game, including all the police vehicles also getting replacements. But you'll still find a few cars that still have tires, like this old beat-up car, or even some of the sports cars, but I feel like it's fitting for the vehicles that still have them, just to have some sort of variety with the vehicles. Plus, all of the guns have not only been replaced with new weapon models from Futurama, but some of these weapons also work completely different from their baseline counterparts. Like with the M16, for example, it used to be the shredder of a machine gun in GTA 3, but the new laser rifle version of it instead dumps an entire mag upon a trigger pull, instantly killing anything that you point and shoot at it with. Kind of like a big laser blast. But most of the other weapons work as you'd expect, but are just now replaced with a laser weapon version. Unfortunately, this mod doesn't have its own storyline to go through or anything like that, at least in its current state, but you can play through all the missions from GTA 3 as Fry. And when I mean all of them, I mean it, as all of the mission providers will be available right at the very start of the game. meaning you can pretty much play every mission string from GTA 3 out of order if you wanted to, which I guess means you could roleplay this game as Fry after waking up in the year 3000, and instead of winding up at the Planet Express, they ended up visiting a bunch of criminals around town for jobs to live a life of crime. So I guess you could make some story tied to this in some way, but just a fair warning, these GTA 3 character models were not meant for Vice City's engine.
I know! Let's outrun it!
But other than that, I guess you could fully play through GTA 3 with this Futurama pack if you wanted. And it's not perfect by any means. You're definitely going to get a few crashes here and there due to the instability of the mod pack, or hell, even run into the occasional visual bug. But granted, this mod was abandoned while in a very early beta state to begin with, so take it as you will with what's given. And since it is abandoned, I wonder if given permission by the dev of this mod, if anyone would be willing to try and tackle a full-fledged open-world mod of Futurama in GTA, by maybe using this as a baseline. As I think it would be really cool to see an open-world New York one day, even if it is a pipe dream of mine. Anyway, for what it's worth, this mod was a huge surprise for me as a Futurama fan. And I've never really seen anyone talk about it before, so if you wanted to check it out for yourself, I'll leave a link down in the description, just like the other mods that are going to show up in this list. Plus, if you are looking for a more completed open-world Futurama experience, then keep an eye out for Slurm Team's Futurama Hit and Run, a mod for Simpsons Hit and Run that completely transforms the game into New York, and will even offer its own story once it's finished. It's currently still in early stages of development, but definitely check out Slurm Team's YouTube channel for an early look at the mod, and support their development in any way you can, because personally I think the mod looks incredibly promising. About a year ago, I covered the controversial yet weirdly intriguing GTA Alien City, or GTA Andarius, depending on where you look it up, which was made by a handful of Russian developers, but mainly led by the developer Daniska. And while the Alien City project has seen the most attention over the years because of its ambitious take on a GTA mod, there was another mod project made by a few of the same devs as well, that I haven't seen get nearly as much attention as Andarius, with this total conversion being one of the strangest, more psychedelic total conversions I've seen yet for the GTA series, with the mod fittingly titled Mushroomia. And yeah, this disclaimer on the splash screen should give you an indication of where things are going, but yeah, don't do drugs. Mushroomia has us taking control of OG Loc on one fateful night, after he's slinging back a few beers at the 1001 Bottles bar. I thought it was the 10 green bottles, whatever. And they're offered some unknown drug by Ryder of all people. But even after taking it and fent-folding in the bar, he says he still doesn't feel it all the way and heads outside to go get some from someone off the streets. But when he heads outside, instead of ending back up in Grove Street, he's instead transported to a whole new world filled with houses made of giant mushrooms and even fruit littered across the land, with plenty of people walking around the streets high out of their mind. And this is Mushroomia. From here, Jeffrey is propelled into a whirlwind of, let's just say, interesting situations, until he finds a way to stumble out of this drug-filled slumber. And the mod actually features its own entire new storyline that surprisingly doesn't take too long, and could be completed in a single sitting at around 4 hours or so. And this mod features a completely new world space that, while small, has quite a bit to explore and discover throughout its many crevices. And given half of this mod is basically a collectathon, you'll be exploring every inch of the city by the end of it, complete with a main story, side quests, minigames to partake in, and that collectathon I mentioned a moment ago. There is plenty to get lost in for the short amount of time you'll spend with this mod. And because of the size of the map, there's not going to be a wide range of new vehicles to drive around, but the ones that are included are hilariously fitting for the setting, like this basket cart that you get to take out for drive-by missions, or this leaf boat that can get you to each island a little bit faster and safer. As this land has quite a few hostile members that'll just come out of nowhere to try to end your life. Like these pesky exploding clowns that come out of nowhere and just blow your shit up if you're not careful. But thankfully you can spot these dudes if you hear their screams right before they run up on you. And later in the mod you get to feed these assholes to some guy you meet. So there's that. But there's also hostile gangs that show up and try to take you out as well. And every once in a while, Mushroomia gets invaded by these watermelon copters. and you have to take him out with this cannon that loads literal people into it. People who are willingly loaded into the cannon, mind you, and you lob them as missiles to take down the opposing choppers, until they scurry away. This is completely optional, as you could just turn off the invasion by just simply saving or starting up another mission, but if you don't, they'll rain down missiles onto the city until you do take care of them accordingly. But the fact that the mod author scripted this entire sequence, and hell, even made a separate minigame for it, is just hilarious to me. Absolutely wild. It does, of course, have some Russian humor littered throughout it, but not nearly as bad as Alien City had, and I found there to be more sex jokes and juvenile jokes, if anything. Like, in order to heal in each area, you could either drink this green slop from a bowl, or you can go to any of the local hospitals and get some head.
Wow.
Which will top Jeffrey off and see him heading back into action real quick. But this mod is absolutely bonkers. But it does have some interesting mechanics behind it. Like, one thing about this mod is that since you'll be walking around most of the time, you won't have access to the car's radio like in the base game. However, the mod author's answer for this was to throw in what's called a stereo man, which spawns a random pedestrian whose sole purpose is to follow you around everywhere and play music for you from a boombox, just bobbing their head around everywhere to whatever jams you choose. Now, because this was a Russian-made mod, most of the music in the game is going to be Russian, but there is a slight mix of English music found in the mod too, which I found one of the stations to just mainly consist of nothing but Red Hot Chili Peppers, which is fine, I guess. But in other missions, there will be some AC/DC, Metallica, and Downset, which I haven't heard since I was like 8. But there's other side missions to do as well, like pulling off drive-bys with these tiny carts, which plays the tracks that I mentioned before while doing these, and we'll have either one guy in our car shooting out at the gangs around Mushroomia, or we'll have to keep up with another car that's also pulling off drive-bys too. And there's also other Radiant quests to do to pass the time and help you collect more mushrooms. And oh yeah, collecting mushrooms! That's kind of like half the point of this mod, and it's also a big part of the story. Which, you're probably thinking at this point, what the hell is the point of this mod? Like, what's the story here? And to be honest, there's not much of a story to really take seriously from this. I could explain it pretty briefly, but if you did want to go into it blind, just skip ahead to this time and we'll pick back up from there, okay? Still here though? Okay, cool. So OG Loc, or you know what, Jeffrey, that's what I'm gonna call him. Jeffrey gets transported to Mushroomia while tripping on that mystery drug, and ends up in Mushroomia. From here, he conspires with some of the locals to find an even greater high than the one he's already on, and his adventure sees him exploring the entire island, helping out those locals that we come across with random jobs, until we meet up with this guy named Old Bones, who is just the truth, again, like in Alien City. But Old Bones has us find the super mushroom that's powering the land, and has us kill all of the people that are like praying to the mushroom. But once we do that, he tells us that we can leave by hitting up the transdimensional porta potty. What the fuck? And after Jeffrey takes a quick shit, which leads us directly into the first ending of the mod, where Jeffrey wakes back up at the bar after shitting all over the place and gets his face properly beat in by the bartender. After a few moments though, Jeffrey wakes back up in Mushroomia in some drug-filled purgatory, and Old Bones has us complete one final mission by collecting 150 mushrooms and bringing them back to him. I'm sorry, what? Huh? At first, I was gonna quit the mod at this point because of how ridiculous this task was, but this is honestly where the mod kind of opens up a bit, allowing us to take those Radiant quests I mentioned earlier, as well as the other side content that I mentioned, and everything you do will help you find and collect all 150 mushrooms, and the mod allows you to do this in any order that you want to. But after gathering all 150 shrooms, we find out he was kidnapped by a bunch of clowns, so we head to their headquarters and pretty much take them all out to get him back, and then give him all 150 mushrooms. A text slide appears saying that Old Bones made all of the mushrooms act like heroin somehow, and then everyone in the town, including Jeffrey, just OD'd from it. But then it puts Jeffrey back in Mushroomia so you can go around and explore it. Look, there's no real point or moral to this mod except for don't do drugs.
Remember, winners don't do drugs.
All in all though, this mod is not really something to take seriously. as it's based on a drug trip to begin with, so many of the aspects of this mod are just gonna be off the walls insane or downright raunchy, but it's a still short, mildly funny, and just overall interesting experience. And I'd recommend any diehard GTA fan to give it a try at least once. Plus, this one can easily be found over on ModDB, so you don't have to really look hard for this one. So if you're interested, the link will be listed down in the description. As we've seen here on the channel before and just recently talked about, GTA and going to space aren't exactly foreign to one another. But have you ever thought about what it would be like to terraform Mars in GTA? Probably not, unless you're some billionaire tweaked out on ketamine. But I mean, there are plenty of other games out there that provide different ways to simulate exploring another planet. Some that come to mind are games like Starfield, No Man's Sky, or, I mean, there's literally a game called Terraforming Mars. Or you're the developer Dimitri R, who thought of the idea of bringing the mission of terraforming and exploring Mars within the San Andreas engine. Since, let's be real, exploring Mars is just not going to happen within our lifetime based on the current state of things, so fuck it, let's do it in GTA. With GTA Journey to Mars, a mod that completely turns San Andreas into an explorable chunk of the Mars surface while playing as a random astronaut. And since the mod looks to be abandoned in its current state, there's only so much that we could play around with. However, what is actually available here is honestly really impressive stuff to see put in GTA to begin with. Once you load a new game and appreciate the new loading screens, you'll be plopped right into the middle of a base that was set up on Mars. Unfortunately, in this latest version, you don't get to fly up to Mars yourself. You could in the earlier versions. But being plopped right here just kind of takes that whole part out of the question. But anyways, once we're here, we can explore the base a bit or head out into the surface of Mars to explore and see what's out there. You have a couple of things you have to look out for besides your health and stamina, like your suit's health meter or your O2 meter, to make sure that you have enough air. So you really do have to be careful when exploring to not damage your suit. But this also means that, unfortunately, you can't stay away from the main or even secondary base for too long without risking losing air. However, there's also a couple of rovers to drive around and explore the surface with too, and these rovers have a battery life, so they can't be driven around forever. However, if you simply just stop for a moment and wait a while, or visit one of the charging stations at each base, you'll be able to get it back up and running. But since we spawned at the base, let's go ahead and check out what is available here. From here, you'll find a few different stations to explore, with each having a pretty realistic airlock system when going into each one, which is pretty cool in my opinion. And once you're inside of one of these buildings, you can go ahead and take your helmet off to take a breather as well. But the first one that I'll cover is going to be the Comms Center. In the Comms Center, you can start different rover missions, both with a land rover and a drone to fly around the surface. And you'll also find Tommy Vercetti in a spacesuit just playing with this makeshift sandbox, just living his best life. Then there's the living quarters area as well, which is pretty self-explanatory and we can save from here. As well as a greenhouse, housing various plants that are being maintained here on Mars' surface. But one thing that caught my eyes, there's a pot growing operation here, all the way out on Mars, which I'm fairly sure is the whole point of this expedition, because man, I'm telling you, this is a whole nother level of space rocks. But jokes aside, as far as I can tell, there's really no point to any of this space expedition. So if it is a huge pot growing venture, hey, I'm all down for it. But at least in the mod's current state, there's no form of a story or plot of any kind. I was able to find hints to a story that might have kind of shown up here, because there's a question mark icon that we can find on the map. But once you get there, somehow, you'll notice that it's just CJ's corpse laying dormant in a spacesuit. Looks like CJ was enjoying that product a little too much out here on this rock. But other than that, there's not much to really see or explore because, as you'd expect, we're exploring Mars. And this version of Mars is very accurately boring to explore. You're not really going to see much besides sand dunes and cliffs surrounding the entire play area. There are some rover missions you can do, like I mentioned earlier, that essentially just have you take the rover to different checkpoints to take pictures of the surface, but that's pretty much it. I even installed a trainer to the mod and started spawning in vehicles and pedestrian models to see if I could find any sort of evidence of aliens or anything like that, but I wasn't really able to find anything that pertained to aliens or just, I don't know, anything interesting. So we can at least confirm that this was strictly going to be a more realistic take on a mission to Mars. Otherwise, this mod stands in its dormant state as an interesting proof of concept at what a realistic take on space exploration could have looked like in a GTA title. And I could see many of these mechanics being adapted to other mods in the future, if they ever went in this direction. Who knows if Dimitri R would ever revisit this mod or complete it, but so far I'd say it's at least worth looking at for its novelty more than anything. But still, pretty cool nonetheless. And last, but definitely not least, we have one of the most interesting mods I think I've ever discovered in my time playing GTA mods. And that's saying something, because I've played some really fucking strange ones, especially in preparation for this video. And in fact, I've never really seen this mod covered by any other GTA mod channels out there to begin with, so I'm hoping this might be a new discovery for some of you, as it was for me. But let me start with a question. Have you ever thought to yourself, what would a GTA game look like if it took place approximately 80 million years ago? No? Me neither. But the developers over at Dromeoland Entertainment, a Russian-based media company from the information that I could find, had this idea, and honestly, it's the strangest idea I think I've ever seen for a GTA mod, and yet it still somehow works. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I've seen the occasional dinosaur mod for San Andreas that adds maybe like a T-Rex or a Velociraptor or something like that. But a full-on total conversion for GTA San Andreas that's centered around the life of a dinosaur, I never would have thought of that in a million years, but count me the fuck in. With this mod being appropriately called Cretaceous Runner. In Cretaceous Runner, we play as a young Dromaeosaurus named Skylar, and end up pretty much experiencing their entire life over the course of this game. From a tiny little whippersnapper who roams the land with his family to hunt and gather food, until they get violently eaten by a T-Rex, which ends up being the catalyst that sets Skylar on a whole new journey. We then get to live their life and see them grow from a runt all the way to an adult, to befriending a slew of other Dromaeosaur out in the land, as well as some shady raptors, to even finding a mate and having our own little baby Dromaeosaur by the end of the game, all the way to taking revenge on the T-Rex that crossed us in the first place.
I know it's a lot to take in right now. Got to
Mrs. Wang!
Yeah, it's kind of insane, and that's just a quick rundown of the story. But the mod takes place across an entire continent with multiple states, and hell, even a couple of islands that we get to explore later in the game. And while the mod is open world akin to the game it's based on, the mod is overall a pretty linear experience. You can explore the map and find other dinosaurs to meet or eat, or discover Dromeo claws to collect, but for the most part, you'll be playing through this game's story mission to mission, with a save point in between each one, and the chance to go explore if you so choose. But the fact that the mission marker is usually placed right next to your last save point, it's almost like the mod is just telling you to just keep going. Cretaceous Runner kind of reminded me of that one game called The Isle, which the YouTuber Slorgs has a fantastic breakdown of this game over on their YouTube channel that I definitely recommend checking out after this video, where you get to pretty much live the life of a dinosaur in a multiplayer setting. Except, of course, with this being San Andreas, it's more single player oriented, of course. But the fact that you get to roam around this huge open world as a dinosaur was such a trip to experience, especially with it being based off of San Andreas. But you can still tell it's San Andreas because you can see that CJ running animation under that dinosaur. I can see it. I can see that. You can't hide from me, CJ Run. It's still a crazy way to implement an entire dinosaur game onto the renderware engine by using San Andreas as a base. And Cretaceous Runner's story is a long one too. Like, I thought this would be a simple 2, maybe 3 hour total conversion to complete, but no, it's a full on like 8 to 10 hour game, depending on how much content you decide to get into. And once you complete the game's story, you get a chance to mess around with a lot of the stuff that you ended up using throughout the main story. Like flying on the back of a pteranodon, riding on the back of a shark out in the ocean, flying a microraptor through the sky, which funnily enough has a machine gun fused to its head. But the story for this mod felt like it went on forever during my playthrough. And there are some mission design decisions that are just abysmal to get through for some of them.
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
Get your
Other than that, the mission design is subpar at best, and mostly consists of fetch quests throughout the entire story, by like killing other groups of dinosaurs, stealing their eggs like I mentioned before, or just traveling across great distances, with the occasional crazy set piece scattered in between every few missions. Like one time we get to ignite a volcano and then race down the mountain face on a piece of wood, or you get to fly through the skies on the back of a pteranodon and then hop onto another raptor's pteranodon and then duke it out to the death on top of it. This story takes some really interesting directions towards the latter half. I'll just leave it at that just to not spoil too much. Because, to be honest, during the duration of making this video, and after seeing pretty much everything this mod has to offer, I really feel like it might deserve its own video. So if that's something you're interested in seeing, definitely let me know. And of course, make sure to subscribe for that. But I feel like even with what we've talked about so far, it should be an intriguing enough insight into what Cretaceous Runner consists of. There's so much content here that I'd recommend downloading yourself and checking it out, and experience what it would be like to play Grand Theft Auto as a fucking dinosaur. Like, go, just download it, give it a shot. Now, I know I've only covered 4 mods here, and you're probably wondering what else could be out there, but my plan for these videos was to eventually make it into a series like you see here with this video. And even though there are a ton of other lost and obscure GTA mods out there, make sure to subscribe here to see more of them down the line, if that's something you're interested in. And also, if you haven't checked out the last Lost and Obscure GTA mods video, definitely give that one a look. Thank you so much for sticking it out waiting for this one, as curating this list was a bit tough, but hopefully these mods will fill in your time a bit until GTA 6 gets here. But have you played these mods yourself at all? And if you have, let me know your opinions down below. Also, if you have any other lost and obscure GTA mods that you'd like for me to cover in the future that don't really get any coverage out there, let me know down below in the comments. For now, I hope you've all had a fantastic day or a better one tomorrow, and I will see you all next time. BladeO out.